And our self-worth is very different. That is the deep internal knowing that you are worthy of love and belonging exactly as you are, not as your past or your past mistakes, not as how much you achieve, but exactly as you are. And when you think about like self-confidence is like the house we build and all the rooms, and we can add to them and decorate them, and it's like amazing and important, but our self-worth is the foundation beneath our house, and our house will only ever be as secure as that foundation of self-worth.
Is there a mantra you have now when you feel doubt? Or if you feel overwhelmed? I know you're, a new mom, you've got new challenges that are in your life. What do you say to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, almost every day, God use me, love use me.
God use me, love use me.
Because I know it's not about me, and I know I don't have to carry it all myself.
That's good. That takes a lot of pressure off you, probably. Because I think a lot of us hold the pressure. It's like all about us taking on everything.
I prayed that before this interview.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's like, help me say something someone else out there needs to hear.
Yeah.
Like, have it not be about me. Because if I start to think it's about me for a second, I'm going to be like, oh, does Lewis think that I'm cool enough to be on a show? Oh, all the stuff that our inner critic starts to tell ourselves about ourselves. And when we make things about ourselves, it's like,
my friend Rory Vaden, who you know, said a great line. It's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service.
Oh, that's so good.
When you're just focused out. You're just focused out. You know what? I'm going to mess up. I'm going to forget something I'm supposed to say. I'm going to stutter over my words. But as long as I make sure that I'm thinking about the people that I'm, in this experience to help them in some way, it doesn't matter if I mess up.
Yeah.
So
and the other thing is, like, if you mess up right now or I mess up right now, it's like someone out there who loves your show and loves you is going to feel like they're not alone in their own mess up that just happened to them that day, right? It's still a service. It's like that servant's heart.
You can't expect to be no one's perfect. So you can't put out that image of perfection. It's not real. So I'm curious. You mentioned there were many things you would have done differently. One, not working 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
I also know in the book you talk about there's no such thing as balance, and I don't think there is a such thing as balance when you're launching something, and when you're needing to build momentum, you've got to go all in, and that means sacrificing certain things for a period of time until you can create more balance. So I know one of them might be not working 100 hours a week every week. Another one you mentioned, which is letting go of people that were maybe toxic and holding on to people for too long who were employees.
I just feel it's, what if, I guess I was thinking this, which is, what if this how are we going to get there, this puzzle, this map we wish so much that somebody would just deliver to us, what if it's so close that we are constantly just tripping over it? Like, what if the portal, the door to all of it is the simplest yet most untapped thing that we've ever done, which is just to fully believe in it. And then it's like, we were talking about Sherry Salata before, and she said to me, when people say, how do you become successful? You were executive producer of Oprah, every successful person over the last 3 decades, them. And what is it that you all have in common? And she said, it's not what are you doing, it's who are you being? It's who are you being, right? And I thought so much about Oprah reading your book because you talk about her in here, but I feel like what you have in common with her is there was a resonance, it was a vibration, it was a knowing, and it was a stepping into that knowing. And it was just that. And so it is. And it's like, and from there, the next piece of the how was revealed because you stepped in. But what do you say to people when they're like, no, it can't be that. It has to be that there's some formula or some degree or some add whatever you want to the list of things I need in order to accomplish the thing, which will never happen. How do you help people really get that believing in it really is there for them?
Yes. And what you just described, the last 5 seconds of what you just described is literally somebody talking themselves out of their own calling. It's us talking ourselves out of our own calling because it's more comfortable to do that because all those things, right? And, But again, oh my gosh, I feel like it comes at the price of the person you're born to be, right? And here's what I'd say to that question. I think it's easy to go, oh, yeah, that girl Jamie, yeah, she was a Denny's waitress and she bagged groceries at a grocery store and pushed grocery carts in and all those things and all those things. But maybe she just got lucky or whatever, right? Maybe she just like all those things. And here's what I've learned and here's what I believe. I do not think that where you come from determines where you're going. I don't think that any of the opposition you face in life, whether it's people rejecting you, people not believing in you, like I've gone through so many years of rejection, and I share the story in this book of, 3 years of like I created this product, and I had this dream, right? Because I have hereditary rosacea on my cheeks, and I could never find makeup that would work for it, and I was working as a television news anchor. I knew nothing about the beauty industry, and took a big risk and poured all of our money into this business, and I finally created something that worked for me. And I really thought this was going to be huge. But I also wanted to use a different type of model than the beauty industry was typically using, because I had this realization, right, that my whole life, because I was like, why can't I find something that works for me? I never realized nothing out there, no other products work for me. And in realizing, wait a minute, okay, my whole life, all I've seen is images of models where they all look, they're photoshopped, airbrushed on commercials on television and in magazines. And I've never actually seen anyone that has rosacea on their face and on top of it, how do you even know if they're wearing the product they're advertising? Like all these things. And I had this big
Such a good point.
company, right? Where I was like, okay, for me, and I know you talk a lot about this too, about, your why and your mission for, why so many of us identify the why behind what we're doing. And it's interesting because I realized early on that when I created this product that finally worked for me, like, yeah, of course, that was a part why of why I did it. Wanting to help so many other people out there that couldn't find anything that worked for them, make their lives easier and better was also part of my why. But what I did early on, just to share this tangent for a quick second, in case it adds value to anybody listening, because I feel like so many people in their careers, when they're going after their dreams, I feel like they'll identify their why, but it just sounds good. And it's actually not like deep enough, right? Like they'll say, oh, I want to do this because I want to buy a house, or I want to help my kids with college, whatever it is. And those are great, awesome whys. And they sound so good. But like, unless it's deep, 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 deep to your core, it's not going to be strong enough to prevent you from quitting when times get tough, right? And I've done a lot of things wrong in my journey, but one of the things I did right was early on, I just peeled back those layers of why am I? And by the way, going through 3 years of hearing everyone say no to you and getting down to under $1,000 in my bank account and not knowing if my company was going to make it. Like when you go through all that opposition, when you have no proof of success around you and you have no one saying this is going to be amazing, you're going to do so good. And like, every time I checked in with my gut, I felt like I was on the right track. But what also kept me going was like, I really did the work early on of peeling back the layers on like the why, deep, deep, deep beneath the why. And for me, it was like, oh, because I had this realization, because no other makeup would work out there. I had this realization that I wasn't just doing this to make a great product. It was like, oh, I'm going to launch this company. I'm going to use women that are models of, and men and every gender identity of any, whatever age, size, skin tone, skin challenge. I want to use all kinds of models and call them beautiful models and mean it, right? And because what I realized is, oh, in this journey of trying to find a product that worked for me and I couldn't, I realized my entire life, even since growing up as a little girl, every time I would see these images in magazines, like I'd see them and I would aspire to look that way. But they also always made me feel like I wasn't enough,
Right.
always. And my deep why, like for this not giving up after years and during years and years and years of no's, was like, I wanted to shift culture in the beauty industry around inclusivity, but also around the types of images used as models and the definition of beauty. And I wanted to do that for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and like every grown woman who still does.
Yeah.
And like, that is what drove me through all of it. Anyhow, it was
Beautiful.
so many years of opposition and of hearing no's from anyone. And to your question on, well, what's the difference? But like, what would you say to people who are like, oh, here's the deal. At the end of the day, and this is after going through so much, like we could talk for 50 million hours about the stories in this book that I've never shared. But like, one of the big things to share is that I believe, and I believe every single person has what it takes to go from like underestimated or facing opposition or filled with self-doubt in their own head, to go from unstoppable. I believe every single person can do it. And I really, truly believe the first criteria for that is that they need to want to, right? They have to want to. And a lot of people just decide, oh, for all these reasons, this isn't possible for me. I believe step one is deciding you want to. And after that, it comes down to mastering belief. And that's hard. But when I look back on my journey, when so many people are like, how did you start with nothing and build $1 billion company from your living room? It's like, yeah, I worked really, really, really hard, too hard, frankly. I worked really hard and I didn't give up. Like every time I got knocked down, another no. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, I cried myself to sleep so many nights, but I didn't give up. But to me, that is just like the price of admission for being an entrepreneur that keeps a business going. For me, the single biggest thing, and I would say this to everybody, despite what their dream is, but like for me, building a $1 billion business from my living room, the single biggest thing I did right was like, I made the decision to believe that I could.
Yeah.
And that is why I wrote this book, because I believe that, it doesn't matter if someone's dream is to get on the PTA board and decide they like the other women. I don't know it doesn't matter what your dream is. To me, learning the steps of and being on the journey of breaking through, learning how to break through that self-doubt, tuning out other people's opinions, and truly, because so many people can't even hear their own intuition, truly learning how to hear your own gut and tune into and learning to trust yourself. And then learning how to truly believe that it's possible for you to become all that you are and all you're called to be. That I believe that's possible for everyone. And that really is why I wrote the book.
Yeah. And you do such a good job of giving that belief over. And I don't know how you do that, because it's such an esoteric and it feels so far away. But I think because your story is so vulnerable and you're so exposed and it's so something we can see, like from the beginning of the book to the end, you're like, oh my God, I could actually see those steps and how she was able to step forward into each new challenge. You really do feel like you grow as a person just by reading it. The thing I find with all of our listeners, and 90% of them are women, this feeling of imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't believe that I would ever want someone to give me money or pay me for something. Like I think I'm a fraud. Like there's so many people better at this thing. Like, yeah, I want to start an Etsy shop, or I want to teach yoga, or I want to make my own makeup line. But Jamie's done that. Bobby Brown's done that. Someone else is making candles. It's this feeling of shame. What if I put this out there and like, who am I to like take up anybody's time? That is just so prevalent.
Yeah.
And
so prevalent.
I don't even get it, honestly. Like just the amount of rejection you just shared, plus you articulated in the book, and also being a little girl who is like in this sort of different kind of a situation where you were adopted. Like, I think so many kids would feel intrinsically rejected. And this is the feeling that it's so easy to go to that place of I'm not enough and I'm a fraud.
Talk to me about the idea of who we can become. What is it you want us to believe?
Yeah. My biggest hope, prayer, intention is that each person closes this book and is better able to hear their own gut and trust themselves. And what I mean by that is, I think what Jay-Z said is so right? But I also think it's not a victory, because we're told so many times, keep going, don't give up. Like, since the time we're little kids, we watch, even if we don't play sports, we watch movies and kids are taught, just don't quit, don't give up. I actually think it's a failure if we don't ever learn how to tune in and hear our own gut and our truth and our calling, and then we just keep going and don't give up anyway, and we're not on the right path. And what I mean by that is, since the time I was a little girl, I'd watch Oprah in my living room, and I just had this knowing, oh, I want to interview other people. Like my whole instincts, Tom, I literally just want to ask you questions right now about you and Lisa, who I'm obsessed with, and like that's my who I am, right? I love other people's stories. And so I knew that's what I always wanted to do for my career. So, eventually that's what I did. I was working as a journalist. I was working as a television news anchor. And when I got that problem that I mentioned earlier, that skin problem, I was at this moment in time. And I think, hopefully everyone in Impact Theory community, like wherever you're at in life right now, at this very moment, I believe everyone has a knowing inside of them. I don't think it matters if they have a faith or no faith. I don't think it matters any of that. I think everyone universally has a knowing or a truth inside. And I think most people never learn how to get still and hear it. And most people, if they do get still and hear it, they're going to know right now, live, while they're listening to you and me, are they in the right job they're supposed to be in? Or are they playing it small? Are they in the right relationship? Or are they in it and dimming their own light because of fear that maybe they'll be alone? We all have a knowing, right? And, what I'll say about the idea of giving up, leveling up, all of that, I think it's so important that, in that moment where I had and again, let me just say, there's so much I did wrong, and I share all that stuff too. But one of the things I did right was when I had this gut feeling as I'm sitting there with this skin problem, this gut feeling, oh, you're supposed to figure out how to create a beauty company. Even though I knew nobody in the beauty industry, had no connections, had very little money because television news does not pay very well. I had that knowing, right? And yet I was sitting there in my dream job. Like that was my dream job since the time I was a little kid. So I think sometimes like knowing when to let go of a dream, knowing when to quit is actually a victory too. It's actually as important as when to keep going, right? And so with Jay-Z's quote, the genius thing we did was we didn't give up. I think that applies only if someone hears their truth and says, all right, I have this knowing I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing. And when I look back at this journey of 3 years of constant rejection, down to under $1,000 in our bank account, literally getting knocked down over and over from all of these beauty retailers that I put on a pedestal, and I couldn't understand why they were telling me I wasn't the right fit for them. Every time I would check in with my gut, right? And maybe so many people out there can relate to this because you feel like you're doing something you're supposed to be doing. But like for me, there was no proof around me that my idea was right. There was no traction in my business. There was nobody saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me buy your product. And then I'm going to the beauty retailers and they didn't believe in the brand. And everything around me was saying, you're wrong. And the easiest thing in life is to confuse that with the truth. And I think the only way we know the truth in life is when we get good at getting still and hearing that inner knowing. And so for me, every time I would get knocked down, I would just check in get still. And it's hard sometimes because a lot of people out there, they have not heard their own gut in a long time, right? Because we have like our friends and family that are worried about us if we're, or they're seeing everything through the lens of their own life and their own fear and their own experience or lack of experience. And then we have, in my case, experts who I valued so much saying like, you're not the right fit. You're not, not literally saying no. And as as I shared in so many stories in the book, they said so many other crazier things that all but basically said, like, it's not just a no now, it's a no forever. Right. But I think the victory is learning to get still and hearing your knowing and then trusting it. A lot of people don't trust themselves. And I think that is what keeps people inside their comfort zone in life, which I think when you stay in your comfort zone, it chips away at your soul. And you end up talking yourself out of your own truth and then never becoming the person you're born to be. Not to get all dramatic on impact theory, but that to me is the biggest. And listen, to me, it's not about the outcome. Oh, here's how to create $1 billion company. It's about the journey of, are you stepping into all of who you are and the person you're born to be? And how do you do that?
You give such great tactical tools. Like, I mean, I could go into, I'm trying to think of like my favorite of all of the tactical tools because there are so many, and there's so many that really align with the things that I write about. And I love the fear of failure. That's a huge thing. Like what you open the book with. Oh my gosh. It's so powerful. Picturing the little child. I want to read that line because that's a really powerful line in the very beginning of the book. Jamie talks about how when you're sitting in the classroom and you know the answer and the teacher asks, the question, and what is that little voice inside of your head that makes you not lift your hand and not say the answer? You're right. Like that's the first little instance of that, even when we're children, of not speaking up, not trusting ourselves and our intuition, that we know the right answer. We know the right direction. And I loved that line from the book. And I remembered that from the very beginning of the book to the end. But I mean, I'll let you speak to that too. I was going to ask you, of all of the tools in the entire book, what do you feel if you had to pick one thing from Worthy, one thing, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. So there's like 3 and just what you were saying.
Perfect.
Yeah, because I know, and there's over 20 tools because, sometimes we get a book and then we're like, well, that was great, but how can I apply it to my life? And I wanted this book, and you just said it so beautifully, Mallory, for wherever anyone's at in their life. I wanted them to be able to apply this to their life right now, to literally learn to believe in themselves, even if it's for the first time ever or for the first time in a long time. And it's just, and the part you're talking about, I think so many people can relate to is often when we're little kids, like we're bold, we're all the things. And then so many of us can remember that moment in the classroom. And for everyone listening right now, maybe you can think back and, there's this moment a lot of us recall where like for the first time ever, we knew the answer, but like we decided not to raise our hand. We decided to doubt ourselves or think maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'll get made fun of if I stand out and know the answer. And all the stuff starts happening, and we start to learn all these lies in our life that lead to self-doubt, to us hiding in plain sight, doubting we're enough, feeling like an imposter. And what I want to say is, and you asked about the difference like between self-confidence and self-worth. That one thing alone is actually super life-changing for anyone listening. And I just, and I would love to kind of explain that, because that's something that everyone listening can apply to their life right now, today, from this episode, from this show.
Yes, I would love to do that too.
And in real life, Mallory, just everyone can, I think, watch and I just love you and celebrate you and love how you are fully authentically who you are out into the world, and you cannot fake authenticity. And that is why so many people connect with you. But just for everyone listening in real time, because I know this is all one big family.
It is.
As I sit here in my Sundays talking, I just want everyone to kind of put this in perspective through Mallory for a minute and think about, not to put you on the spot, but think about like Mallory's journey and how you're watching it unfold before your eyes, of her, journey through everything from television to pageants to launching, Living Fully Co. to now in my Sundays. And all of us have dreams and hopes and ideas and things inside of us. And as we step into who we are in this world and who we feel we're called to be, our self-worth will be our ceiling. And so why I wrote this book is for every person, no matter where you're at, no matter if you're going to launch your own version of Living Fully Co. or you want to have the self-worth and belief and confidence in yourself to just decide to start showing up authentically on social media, or to make new friends as an adult, or to set boundaries for the first time ever, or to say what you really feel and mean what you really say. I mean, there's so many areas this applies to our lives. But even watching you, Mallory, and everything that you're building in real time, the greatest key to your success will be that you continue to fully show up in alignment with your assignment as who you authentically are.
I love that line in the book, by the way.
Right?
Alignment with your assignment.
And then also that you don't doubt yourself out of your own destiny, because to watch you doing these great things, and I'm just sharing this in community with everyone listening now, like we're all together in a room in our Sundays, and we're just talking and all cheering you on. And we're all part of this beautiful journey with you, with everything you're putting out there in the world. And here's what happens to a lot of people. At some point in the journey, sometimes before they've even started it, they deep down inside don't think they're worthy of it. And so they stay stuck. Because here's the thing, just to take a big step back, self-worth, and when we have lack of self-worth, which again is very different than self-confidence. I'll explain that in a second. But if we have a self-worth issue, this is what it usually looks like in our lives. If we have pretty low self-worth, and by the way, I've been in a spot where I've been accomplishing so much and the world's telling me I'm amazing, and I have a lot of self-confidence, which is all external based, but inside I didn't believe I was enough. And when we struggle with low self-worth, for a lot of us, it looks like this in our lives. It looks like we are stuck. We are stuck. We don't go for the thing. We have the business idea, but we don't launch it. We have the website we want to register, or we want to put our art out into the world, or our ideas, or we want to share a really cool idea at work that might change everything, but we stay stuck. We don't do it. We don't know why. We tell ourselves stories like, oh, I just need more experience, or, oh, I need to get more skill sets, but really, we don't realize it's because deep down inside, we actually don't feel worthy of the thing. So we will stay stuck. And that if we have low to medium self-worth, what that looks like in our life is we might go for the thing. We might launch it. We might put ourselves out there, but then we will sabotage it along the way. We'll write the whole first half of the book and then we'll stop. We'll put the business out there, and then we don't know why we're scrolling Instagram for 8 to 10 hours a day. Like we'll totally put ourselves on the dating app. We'll start dating, and then we meet a great person, and we all of a sudden put him in the friend zone and aren't attracted to him, and we don't know why. Like when we don't think we are worthy of something, whether it's of receiving love a certain way, because deep down inside we don't fully love ourselves yet, whether it's any number of things, we'll sabotage it, or we'll hit a ceiling. And then if you have medium to high self-worth, but it's not quite high, what that looks like is we'll actually go for the thing. We'll make it happen. We'll be crushing it everywhere, but we'll arrive at it still feeling like it's not enough, and like we're not enough, and like something's missing.
And unfulfilled.
Unfulfilled.
Unfulfilled. I love that when you talk about how like the self-worth is it's the foundation of your fulfillment. Yes. I've never thought of it like that, because I have had different versions of self-worth, and it's amazing that you speak to those 3 different people in this book. So it's like
Yes.
anybody that picks up worthy, whether it's like, I've never had self-worth, and I've never started anything, and I've never raised my hand, and I've never been that person. You talk to them in this book. The medium person, you self-sabotage. Self-sabotage was such a big like theme in my own life. And that's a tough one because like,
Yeah.
especially if you are a perfectionist or like a recovering perfectionist, it's like, that's my own fault. It's like a double whammy. But I love that high tier self-worth piece that it's tied to fulfillment. Because
Yes.
man, do I relate when you talk about over and over in this book about how you got to the top of the mountain and you had all the things and everybody's like, awesome job. And you still don't feel it. It's like, well, what in the heck else can I do? Nothing. Go
Yes.
inside.
Yes, because
Yes.
here's the thing, like wherever you go, whatever you achieve, whatever, you still take you with you.
Yes.
And so and here's the thing is for everyone listening, you can even think about in your own life right now, if you've ever well, let me take a step back. So okay, really fast, self-confidence and self-worth, so different.
So different.
And we are raised by lots of well-intended, awesome family members, and if we're blessed, and by commercials and advertisements, all kinds of things, our whole life to think, if I just get these things, then I'll be happy, not realizing that those things all build confidence, but none of them build worth. And self-confidence is while it's an internal trait and it's so important in our lives, it's so valuable in our lives, but self-confidence is largely based on external things, on how we assess our skills and abilities, how we compare and stack up and measure to others, our willingness to try and go for it, if we're winning or losing, how much of the world's definition of success we have. And our self-confidence fluctuates. It's fragile. They do studies that the boxer that wins the fight is automatically 30% more confident. Like it's very, and our self-worth is very different. That is the deep internal knowing that you are worthy of love and belonging exactly as you are, not as your past or your past mistakes, not as how much you achieve, but exactly as you are. And when you think about like self-confidence is like the house we build and all the rooms, and we can add to them and decorate them, and it's like amazing and important, but our self-worth is the foundation beneath our house, and our house will only ever be as secure as that foundation of self-worth. And for everyone listening, if you think about like, maybe you've always had like a certain, or you've had many, but a certain goal or dream that you thought like, when I finally get that thing, then I'm going to be happy. Then I'm going to be fulfilled. And maybe it's getting married or having kids. Maybe it's like getting the dream house or hitting a certain goal weight or a number in the bank account or a job title or fame or any of those things. And then we work so hard for these things, right? And have you ever worked so hard? Sometimes it's months or years or decades. And then you finally got that thing.
Oh yeah.
And then when you arrived at it, did it like solve all your problems, make you happy and fulfilled forever?
For like 5 minutes.
Right? Yeah. For most of us, it's like, oh, we were happy for a month or a week or 5 minutes. And all of a sudden we're like, why do I still feel like something's missing, or like it's not enough, or like I'm not enough? And then what we do, and by the way, when we think about this, every commercial on television is like, if you get this, and like we just tend to think those are the things, right? Every well-intended family member says, how, are you married yet? Are you going to have kids? How's your job? We think once we have great answers to all those things, we'll finally feel enough inside. And in the pursuit of all those things, right, we finally get one, and then we realize, oh, I still feel like something's missing. So usually what we do is we then think, oh, I just got to work harder. I just got to go to the next level. I just got to achieve more. And this becomes this never-ending cycle for most people. Their entire life, they arrive never feeling enough or fulfilled. And those things are beautiful and important, and they all build self-confidence, but none of them build self-worth. And that's different. And so when you, and the one thing I want to share really fast is that when you build self-worth and believe you are enough as who you are, it doesn't curb your ambition. Like you actually become more ambitious, right? Like when you learn to believe you are enough as you are, you become more ambitious because you realize like, oh gosh, if I fall flat on my face, if I fail, it might shake my confidence a little bit, but yeah, it cannot touch my worth. And you become more ambitious. And the beautiful part, like I've only learned to have true self-worth in my life the last 3 years. That's it. And I still work harder than ever. But when I achieve the things I'm so passionate about, I actually feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Versus like something's missing, I'm not enough, I'm perpetually not enough. I'm no longer sabotaging things in my life. And it's self-worth is truly the one thing that changes everything. And I know there'll be so many people listening right now that just step one have awareness going, oh gosh, yes, self-confidence is important, but all the things I've been trying to do thinking that they'd make me feel enough, they're all building self-confidence, which that's important. Yes. But they do not build self-worth. It's very different. And just that awareness is going to be life-changing.
It's going to be life-changing. And I've never, ever heard anyone speak about self-confidence and self-worth in this way ever. It was a very big aha for me. And even in the parts of the book where you were talking about, I'm a big, like, I love to visualize. I know that you do too. Like, I go back to the like old school Jamie that I know that talked about it in Believe It, where you would sit in the QVC parking lot and you'd visualize yourself and you'd visualize visualization is big for me and you too, but for me and you both. But I never really thought about, I'd always thought, okay, to manifest these things, and we're in the new year, it's February, to manifest these things, I've got to do a great vision board. I got to visualize. I'm going to, really be thinking about these things. But you bringing in the aspect of, no, actually, you know what you got to do before you get those magazines out and before you make your chart of the things you want in your life? You've got to get that self-worth right. You've got to that's actually the foundation. And I thought that was really powerful in terms of visualizing goals and things in your life. And I'm a big visualizer, and I'd never thought about it like that. That was powerful. That was really powerful.
And I love a great vision board. And here's what's wild is when you can look back at the things on your vision board that have happened, right? It's often when you also in parallel, learn to believe you're worthy of those things, right? So we can have like the big vision boards and all that, which I love. And I love manifesting. I love all that. And I know exactly what you just said, that none of them will actually happen until we learn to believe we're worthy of them, or we'll make them happen, but then we'll sabotage them, right? Because our self-worth is our ceiling. It is the thing. It is the thing.
It is the thing.
Yes. It is why I wrote Worthy. And literally, like you shared, I'm donating 100% of the proceeds. Yeah. This is not, for me, this is like, oh my gosh, it was, and I feel so blessed. And yes, I worked really hard and did 100-hour weeks for a decade and all the things to build a $1 billion business from my living room. But I was actually praying about this recently. And I just felt this like feeling like, I feel like I did all those things, not so that I had some great outcome, but to learn this lesson that no matter how hard you work or how much you achieve, like, yes, that's fun. And I'm grateful for all of it, but it's not the thing that ever makes you feel enough. It's not. And I don't think had I not gone through all of it, and then like, I remember, oh my gosh, Mallory, I remember, being a little girl watching Oprah growing up, always dreaming of meeting her.
And this story, and it took you how many years to call her after? 4?
Oh my gosh.
Tell that story. That's a good story.
That is what low self-worth looks like in our life. And by the way, sometimes it's that we meet a really cool new friend as an adult and we don't know why we're not reaching out, asking them to go to coffee. We don't know why. And like, we will sabotage things when we don't think we're worthy of them. And yeah, my whole life, I watched Oprah as a little girl in my living room, and, I was alone a lot growing up. I'm adopted. And I just had this like, no business even thinking this, but like, I just was like, I'm going to meet her one day. And I dared to pray and believe that was going to happen. And, and I, 40 years later met her and had lunch at her house, had a 3-hour lunch. And imagine, whoever, for everyone listening, whoever maybe one of your heroes was your whole life from the time you were a little girl, and then meeting them. And then I had this 3-hour lunch and it was amazing. And by the way, Mallory, at that moment in time, I was like crushing it in the world. I was so confident. I had just sold at cosmetics for $1 billion cash. And I was on the Forbes list. All these things looked like I must just feel so great on the inside. And I didn't know yet the difference between self-confidence and self-worth. What I know now is I had a whole lot of self-confidence. I had this amazing 3-hour lunch with Oprah at her house. At the very end of it, she gave me her cell phone number and said, call me anytime. You can call me anytime. And I left there and I did not call her for 4 years. 4 years. And in that process, I told myself stories, right? About like, oh, I just need to wait for the perfect thing to say, or, oh, everyone wants something from her. I'm going to prove I don't need anything. Like just all these stories. And literally 4 years later, I realized that the real reason I hadn't called her was deep down inside, I didn't feel worthy of it. I didn't feel worthy of being her friend. And I knew that was a lie. Like I remember this day going, wait a minute. My soul, if I pray and I ask God to tell me that my soul knows I am a kick-ass friend.
Yeah.
Like I am worthy of being anyone's friend. I know that. But self-doubt, which lives in our thoughts and our mind, had convinced me this lie that I wasn't worthy. And that day I was like, I literally imagined like the way you'd see a volume dial on a radio in the car. Like I imagined turning down the volume on my self-doubt in my mind.
I love that.
And turning up the volume on that knowing, that still small voice, that intuition, that knowing in our soul that, you know, for me, when I pray, it's how I hear God talk to me is through my intuition. That's like, oh, you are more than enough. And you are so worthy of being her friend or anyone else's friend. And that day it was like, I had to listen to that knowing. And that was the first time I called her. And you know, what's wild is then we've taught a course together, all these things since, but what's wild is it almost didn't happen because that time and so many others, I was doubting myself out of my own destiny.
Yeah.
And when I think about everyone listening right now, and I think about like, just when we learn to build self-worth and believe we're worthy of a great friendship, of a healthy relationship, of sharing our ideas and raising our hand, of writing a book and sharing our story, or putting our ideas out in the world, or showing up authentically. Like, I just think of how many people are doubting themselves out of their own destiny right now, because they believe the lie that they're not worthy of it, or that they're not enough. And I'm just so passionate about how the time for change has come, literally. And that's why also it's just an honor too, Mallory, to just champion you and cheer you on. Like I know so many people listening are, because we can all see ourselves in another woman as she is believing she is worthy of the things she's doing, whether it's making a certain bread recipe or like showing their kids making a disaster of the house or launching her business out into the world. We see that in us, in you. And I think you help bring that out in every person watching, because at a soul level, every one of us knows that we are fully worthy as we are. And like, that's one of the things I'm most excited about Worthy, about the book, is that this isn't like, oh, here's how to learn this foreign language that's going to take years to understand. It's like, oh, no. Actually, every person, this is the best news, is every person listening to us right now, I do not care how many past mistakes, failures, how many people you've hurt, how many things you regret, where you come from, what you don't have or don't know, or how many successes you have. I don't care about any of it. You right now are fully worthy. And it's not about learning to be somebody else. It's about unlearning the lies that tell you you're not. And that's what's so powerful and beautiful. And so, I'm just really, really excited. And
this is our victory lap, right? I like it when you say that, and they're like, let's run the victory lap. Like, forget about so many people live in the past and their past mistakes. And I just, you're talking about people watching me, and I just have to say, because truly, I mean, Jamie can say one single sentence to me, because Jamie is, you are so wise. You are so wise. You can say one thing to me and it completely changes my mindset and the trajectory of the whole entire decision I'm going to make. And like, they're huge decisions. So that's why I was so excited to read Worthy. And I'm so fortunate and lucky because not only did I know about the book, I was one of the first people that you were like, this was my life's work. It was a divine download. And I'm like, okay, Jamie, show me the book. Let me see. Let me read this book. And let me tell, oh my gosh, it is your life work. It is your life's work. It is a divine download. It is all of the things that you said, because when I read this book, it jumped off the pages to me. And it's really cool because I'm so lucky that I have some access to you, and you can help me through these things. Now you're helping everybody else. Anybody that picks up a copy of Worthy and reads this book, even reads like 2 chapters of this book, it's going to actually change your life. It's going to actually change your life. And that is so cool because, I interview a lot of people and I'm like, this is really awesome. And I'm really inspired. But then I read this book and I was like, okay, this is actually going to change a lot of women's lives. And it's really cool. And I'm so grateful that we got to talk about it, because I'm certain that every single woman after listening to this podcast is going to be very inspired, and they're going to pick up this book, and it's a gift. It's a gift to women. And I'm so certain of what you just said, that all the things that you went through in your life, they guided you here, because this is incredible stuff in Worthy. Incredible stuff, Jamie.
With your journey of like going from not believing in yourself to believing in yourself and believing you're enough, how was it a decision that you made, or was it really just this, process of basically your entire life up until then?
Yeah, it's been so many lessons along the way, and so many setbacks that I later realized were setups. So many things I did wrong, and then really looking back at what were those things I did right? Looking back at when I made decisions where I listened to other people's opinions or the experts instead of actually listening to my own gut. Oh, those were the things I did wrong. When I look back at what happened, right? And it's been building on all of these things. And so, in the book, I share so many stories, and it's wild because like literally 95% of the book is stuff I've never shared before, ever. And I had this realization that a really big realization that, because I get DMs on Instagram every single day from so many girls and women and people who say like, oh, wow, you started with nothing and built a $1 billion business from your living room. Like, did you just get lucky, or was like, did someone give you a big break, or like, did you, right? All those things. And I kind of had this realization, oh, when you just see the highlight reel or you just read the headlines, it makes it seem like, oh, maybe she just got lucky, or she's, whatever. And it's like, what? I felt this strong calling on my heart that if I could pour everything I've learned into how you do that, like how did I do that, into one book, that would be of service to other people, right? And so like, for example, I'm donating 100% of the proceeds, by the way, every penny from the book. I'm literally purely just doing it for exactly the question you just asked, which is to help every other person out there learn to believe that stepping into all of who they're born to be is possible, right? The thing, when I look back on all of the lessons from going through years of hearing no, because I created a company called It Cosmetics in my living room, where I started with an idea and close to no money. And I just thought once we created an amazing product that worked, I thought it would just do well, right? And then I started this journey of every beauty retailer saying no, every department store, every QVC, everybody saying, no, you're not the right fit. We don't think your positioning is right. We don't think you're right for the beauty industry, all those things. And when I look back and I went through 3 years of hearing no's from everybody, and got down to under $1,000 in my bank account, which was our personal and business bank account, and didn't know how I was going to make it. And when I look back on all of the journey, like, there's so many lessons I learned along the way, but one of the biggest ones, and really a huge through line in this whole book, is that like, yeah, I worked really, really hard, and I didn't give up. And not giving up every time you get knocked down, every time you get a setback, that's so important, because at the end of the day, a lot of people never realize their dreams because they actually just quit or they give up or they let their own self-doubt talk them out of it. So I didn't give up, and I worked really, really hard, but like how I actually built a $1 billion business from my living room was like the most important thing I did when I look back at everything was like, I made the decision to believe that I could. And when I try to dissect how did I do that, that's really why I wrote this book, is sharing every single lesson on how do you actually truly peel back the layers on your why, not just do a why. Because that's the other thing too. A lot of people, when they might keep a goal journal or they might write out their goals, and then a lot of people will go another step, right? And they'll talk about their why. Like, I'm doing this for, because I want to one day buy a house, or I want to, all these things, or do something for my kids, or pay for their college, or pay off my student loans, whatever it is. And what I've seen over the years is that those whys, they sound really good. And when you tell them to other people, they like sound great. But if it's not deep, 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 deep to your core, you're going to quit. It's not going to be strong enough for you to keep going when you face all these setbacks. And so one of the things I talk about in the book was like, because I've done a ton of things wrong. And I share those too. I've never shared this stuff before. I'm actually freaking out, to be honest, but I just know it's not about me. It's going to be of service to so many people to know they're not alone in their setbacks and in their hard times and in how to handle them. But in the book, I talk about, like, I did a ton of things wrong, but one of the things I did right was early on in my journey, I knew, okay, I'm creating makeup products. And of course, I want them to work for me and my rosacea because nothing else will. And of course, I want to help other people. And those are great whys, but they weren't deep enough. And what I realized is, in my whole childhood, all growing up, I only saw images of beauty in magazines and on TV commercials. And they were never real, right? They're always overly photoshopped. And I never saw anyone that looked like me or had any skin challenges. And I realized in the development of this company, while I was trying to create a product that actually worked, and when I realized why didn't any other product work, and then I realized, oh, wait, I don't even know if the models are actually wearing the product they're advertising, all those things, I realized, okay, not only do I want to create a company that has great products, but I want to start using models that are every age, every size, every skin tone, every skin challenge. And I want to authentically define them as beautiful and mean it and all those things. And I had this realization on the why beneath the why early on, that, like, for me, it was like, oh, I want to shift culture and beauty. And I want to do this for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown woman who still does. And that why was so deep for me because of my whole childhood, realizing I'd see these images and I'd want to look like them. I'd aspire to look like them. And at the same time, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And so this deep why was so important. I talk about, like, how to do that in the book for yourself, for whatever your dream is. Because some people out there, they're like, oh my gosh, I really just want to dance, and I want to start painting again, or I want to launch a business, or I want to become a pastor, or I want to start a blog, right? Like, we all have these things. And I feel like we end up, right? Because here's the big thing. This is the big thing that, and I love just sharing this process in the book too, but so many of us know we have this calling on our heart, or this, like, kind of inkling where we want to step out and do something, but like, it's way more comfortable in our comfort zone. And I feel like when we stay in our comfort zone, it comes at the price of chipping away at our soul. That's the first thing. And when we have a gut feeling, an intuition, like we're made for more, like we have gifts or talents or ambitions to offer the world, one hard part I've seen and experienced personally too is sometimes the people around us, even when they're great people, whether they're family or friends or whatever, and they love us dearly, they don't have that same inkling. like they don't get it. They're super happy in their comfort zone. And what happens to so many people is we have the volume turned up on listening to everyone around us. And then we have the self-doubt in our heads of, oh, well, maybe I'm not qualified, or maybe I don't have what it takes, or maybe I don't, other people are way more advanced artists than I am, or other, whatever, that inner critic. So we start to turn up the volume on our own self-doubt. We start to listen to all the opinions of everyone else around us. And before we know it, we talk ourselves out of our own truth. And this happens to so many people. And in the book, Believe It, like a big part of why I did it too is like, I talk about the journey of how to love the circle around you, but how to turn down the volume on the stuff that's not for you. And that goes against the calling of who you are and who you're created to be. And how do you add other people around you and turn the volume up on them? And even more than that is the self-doubt and everything that we all experience in our own heads, right? And I just feel like that self-doubt sometimes in our own heads is a bigger opposition against us than the people out there rejecting us or saying no, or saying you're not the right fit for us, or whatever it might be, right? And so this book talks so much. I share so much about how to break through that noise of self-doubt, and learn to actually hear your own intuition and learn to trust yourself, right? Because so many people don't even know how to tune in and listen to their own intuition. Maybe they haven't even heard it ever or in a long time, because everything around us is so much noise, from other people's opinions to people not believing in us and us getting no's and rejected, to then the self-doubt in our own head. It's a lot. And I think the journey of learning how to go from not trusting yourself to truly trusting yourself is huge. And it's so many people, it's their journey they're on right now as well. So this book is definitely for them.
It's crazy what you're talking about right now, even just, loving the people around you, but maybe turning down some voices or working through self-doubt. I was actually talking to my pastor this morning, and we were just having this conversation, and she was just saying, a lot of us have very unique calls on our life. Like a lot more of us have those than realize. They either just don't realize them, or they don't have, the courage or the faith to kind of walk that out. And we were talking, and I was like, it's not my job to get these people to understand me. Like, it's my job to follow what I feel as though like God has put on my heart, or what I feel as though is like inside of me. And that's something that I feel like has been a constant battle, not even necessarily with other people, but even with myself sometimes, because something specifically that I'm even trying to work on now is believing like the best is yet to come, and like being one of those people who believes like, oh, I am so excited for the future. I know what God has for me. I know it's going to be even better than what I've seen. And maybe it's just the year that we've been in, or a lot of other life circumstances, but that's something that I'm working on for myself. And it's not about like being this positive person necessarily, but it's a deep core belief, not only in myself, but that there is so much good to come. And obviously we're promised trials, like that stuff will always happen. But I feel like when you're in the middle, like we talk about when you are talking about the difference between the headlines versus the reality, I feel as though that's where I feel like I'm kind of at right now, and where so many people listening to this are. How do you like navigate the in between? And not that it ever necessarily stops, but when you feel like you're in the middle and you see more in your head than you see that's like in front of you.
Yeah. So, and I love that you talk so openly about your faith, right? In all of this, because for me, that has been like the espresso in my latte in life. You know what I mean? In such a big way. So a couple things. I think that, and I have known this, but sometimes we know something, and until we actually truly experience it and look back, then we're like, we go from like believing it to like being certain of it, right? And in my journey, the thing that I know for sure, I know this for sure, is that every setback we experience is God's way of setting us up. Every setback is a setup for all that is to come. And I believe that the things we go through, even periods like right now that you're describing of feeling like you're in the middle and you're trying so hard to anticipate and believe that the best is yet to come. Even this season, right? I believe is a setup for everything that is to come. And I believe that in all my heart. And when I look back at it, I have learned every setback and every hard season and every season that was just okay was a way of actually making me strong enough to be able to handle the weight of the big God-sized dreams when they come true. Because God-sized dreams and stepping into our calling and stepping into who we were created to be, especially those of us that know in our heart we're meant for more, we're meant to give more, serve more, create more, love more, inspire more, right? Be of service more. I believe when you're at service at the highest capacity, that it's not about you, it's about how has everything you've walked through and been through actually helping someone else believe it's possible to get through it, believe it's possible to step into all of who they are. And we can't do that unless we've gone through it all as well. And so I believe our setbacks are God's setups for everything that's to come. And it doesn't mean they're fun and it doesn't mean they're easy. When I look back at going through like the 3 years of rejection, or I look back at, painful moments, right? There was a moment where, the story when, we were a couple years into the business, I didn't know how we were going to make it. And we had a really big investor interested in our company. And I thought like, oh my gosh, he's going to change my life, because he had invested in all these consumer product companies that we all buy at the grocery store. And he'd his private equity company had invested in a lot of them when they're super small and made them huge brand names, household names. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we went through all these meetings, and at the very end, and I thought like, oh, if he invests in us, then we're not going to go bankrupt. And maybe he can help us get into all these stores like Sephora and Ulta and department stores who are all saying no to me. I thought it was the biggest, most exciting thing ever. And at the end, we flew out for the final meeting, and he was standing 3 feet from me, and my husband was right next to me. And he said, we're going to, I wanted to share with you in person that we're so grateful for your time. We're excited for all you're building, but we're going to pass on investing in cosmetics. It's a no. And I remember saying, okay, can you give me some feedback? Can you share why? Because I always think feedback's a gift, usually. And he said, do you want me to be honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And when he said my body and my weight, I remember this moment where I was looking at him, and it's almost like I was watching his lips move in slow motion as these words were coming out. And I felt my whole body flood with this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. And it was this moment where it's like I was staring my own fear, straight in the eye. And I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. I also knew in that moment, deep down inside, I had this feeling, and this is why it's so important that we do the work of learning to listen to our gut and listen and learning to trust ourselves. Because in that moment, I had no proof around me that this company would ever grow or become successful. And then I have this person in front of me that I saw as a visionary. I saw as someone who truly created stellar brands. And he's telling me, no one will buy makeup from someone who looks like me, my body and my weight. And I had this feeling deep down inside my gut in that moment that he's wrong. And I also knew if I was ever going to prove it, I would have to figure out how to believe that for myself. And the other thing is, in that moment, I didn't even get mad at him. Of course it hurt me, and I had to learn, we talk about volume. I had to learn how to turn down the volume on those words from being on the repeat button in my head over and over and over for years. But I also knew in that moment, he's passing on investing in my company because the sole reason I want to create this company, he's been impacted by the beauty industry his entire life. And he's learned, just like we've all have been taught, you have to look a certain way to sell something, right? And so he was just, I don't want to say a victim, but like a byproduct of what he's seen his whole life on television and in magazines. So it fueled me. And this is part of why mindset is so important and why not slipping into that like, woe is me, victim kind of mindset. It was like, oh no, you know what? This is a gift. This is a setback right now. It really sucks. Like, God, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. I don't know how I'm going to keep the lights on. Like, I started going to the Costco. I don't know if you have a Costco by you, but the Costco outdoor food stand where you get the $1 hot dogs. Yep. I was like, okay, God, I'm doing that. And at least they taste good. And I was like, how am I going to keep this business alive? That setback was a setup because it fueled me, this deep, deep, deep why of like, oh, even this dude is like this dude in a business suit who has probably never bought a beauty product in his life is impacted the same way women are by the industry. And it fueled me. And so I believe, and really honestly, the reason I wrote this book, and like I'm literally donating 100% of the proceeds of the book. The reason I wrote this book is because I believe everything we've gone through, especially once we're through a lot of it, we learn like, oh wow, the next level of success is that it's not about us. Like, how can my story, your story, everyone who's listening's story actually be of service to other people when we actually have the courage to share it? And for me, that's where I get my greatest joy. And it's like the lessons and the stories in this book, if this can save other people from making a lot of the mistakes I made, and save them at least some nights of crying themselves to sleep at night, but more importantly, help them on their journey of like believing themselves, trusting themselves, like knowing they're enough, and just deciding it's possible to step in to who they were born to be. Like to me, that's everything. And so the season you're going through right now, okay, don't even get me started right now on your calling, because first of all, you are magic. And so many people listening right now will agree with me. And everything you're going through right now is of course part of your own journey, but we all have the blessing of being able to listen to you and then actually have it fill us up and have us, all of us together, feel less alone when we're going through the same things. Do you know what I mean? And so even if it's hard right now or uncertain right now, or so many people, I mean, this year has been packed with uncertainty, right? More than so many people have ever experienced. And I would never downplay how hard it's been on so many people ever. I would never wish it on people ever. What I know through so many, and this book is so many personal hardships too, right? From adoption, surprise, you're adopted in your 20s. I found out in my 20s, to rejection, to like all of these things personally, right? I just think that they're all part of our journey to make us strong enough to be able to carry the weight of our calling when we step into it.
Thank you. Something I love so much about you is how you are so willing to share and to open up. And it's almost like you're this open book and you're trying to give value, and you do give value to pretty much every single person who I'm sure like even comes across.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima!
Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.